Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So today I'm going to provide you my initial thoughts or my initial reaction to the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. So for those of you who don't know, it was just unveiled yesterday, August 1st, and I had an opportunity to really dig through a bunch of videos of it, see a ton of photos, and of course read all the performance specs, everything that has been released on it. And I've really developed a pretty good idea of it without having had the luxury of having hands-on experience with it yet. So I'm eager for that. So take some of this with a grain of salt, but I do want to voice through my initial thoughts of it and really highlight a number of topics. So starting with the primary points, the design cues, functionality, and performance. And I'll wrap up this video with what I think would be the better buy between the brand new 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser or the brand new Lexus GX 550, which is based on the same exact platform. So I'll give you my final thoughts on that as we wrap up this video. So I'll go ahead and just kind of dig in. I wrote a bunch of notes here as I watched a bunch of videos on it. I'll throw up a number of photos all throughout as I talk through the points. And really, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it, okay? And I'll do my best to shoot you straight with how I truly feel about it as we walk through this, okay? So starting with the primary points right up front. So the most important, most notable points are it comes in 3 trims. So we have the Land Cruiser 1958, the 1958 edition, the standard Land Cruiser edition, the mid-tier, and then the Land Cruiser First Edition, which will be limited to 5,000 units. So that always excites me. The whole numbered vehicle thing always excites me. However, let's call it what it really is. Let's call it the greedy dealership markup edition, right? So once you put a number on a vehicle and make it a numbered vehicle, man, those dealers start licking their chops, unfortunately. So those are the 3 trims being released. The 1958 model, I mean, that's significant because, well, 1958 was the first year that the Toyota Land Cruiser entered the American market, right? So that's the significance of that. The really unique thing that I didn't fully expect to see was 2 different fascias, right? So we have the rectangular headlights, and that's kind of like the teaser shot that we have seen of the Heritage Blue one, the initial teaser shot, as well as the circular headlights. The circular headlights will come on the 1958 trim as well as the first edition, leaving the quote-unquote mid-tier Land Cruiser trim with the rectangular lights, reminiscent of what we find on the 60 series, the 62 Land Cruiser, right? So honestly, I prefer the rectangular. I think that looks better. However, I think much of the other design cues of the 1958, the more simplistic, the cheapest version, really appeals to me most. And I'll dive into that as we go through these details here. So speaking of price and being the cheapest, I love hearing that the starting price point is in the mid-50s. So we were all kind of eager for that to be the case, and I do think that is a very good move by Toyota to do that, to make it a much more bearable price tag for people to actually purchase the thing. The modern working man, the average working man can actually buy this vehicle now, which is pretty cool. And unfortunately, you couldn't really say that with a straight face for the previous 200 series that we received in the United States, right? Because that was $86,000 starting, and then $89,000 for the Heritage Edition in 2020. Then 2021 it went up a little bit for the third row. So a little out of reach for most people. So I love hearing that it's going to start in the mid-50s. The part that I don't love hearing for the Land Cruiser in particular is it is only coming with the 4-cylinder iForce Max that we're going to be seeing in the brand new 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. I say I don't love that. I'm sure my opinion will change when I actually experience it and drive it, but the concept of it, I don't love. And I didn't love the iForce Max in the 2023 Toyota Tundra TRD Pro and the 2023 Toyota Sequoia TRD Pro, which I owned. Just didn't love the power delivery, and it felt a little synthetic. So that is my gripe with that whole hybrid battery pack, twin turbo, blah, 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 okay? I digress, okay? But it is only coming with that power plant. But when you look at the performance numbers, it really is incredible. And we'll dive into that toward the end of the video of what those numbers are, okay? It is a full-time 4-wheel drive, so I was happy to see that they carried on the tradition of the Land Cruiser being that full-time 4-wheel drive, rather than having that transfer case that you manually pulled between 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. So I like seeing that. It does come standard with a center and rear diff lock, so that's great for the off-roading enthusiasts. So people are buying these vehicles they do want to get out there and hit the trails. I mean, they're kind of unlike me for the most part. They do want to go out and do that with their vehicles. Whereas if you bought a 200 series, the last iteration of the Land Cruiser in the United States, more often than not, you were not going to be taking your $90,000, $89,000 vehicle straight to the trails. Some people did, props to you, but that wasn't the norm, right? So I love seeing that price tag starting in the mid 50s. And most importantly, ending out the primary point section of this discussion here is still made in Japan. So 100 style points for that. And I love that they continued that. They didn't outsource it to Mexico like they did the Tacoma or anything goofy like that. So I love that the Japanese take tremendous pride in the Land Cruiser nameplate, and it shows. They keep it there in their home country and take tremendous pride building it with excellent quality. So love that it's continuing to be built in Japan. Let's shift gears to the design cues. So I have a lot to talk about here. I'm gonna try to rip through it. You know, again, I don't want to be like reading a brochure to you guys. I'm trying to avoid that, but I'm purposely kind of giving the overall synopsis of it, and then we're gonna wrap up with my final thoughts. Okay, so looking at my notes here a little bit, forgive me guys. The side profile, I do love the fact that it continues to look iconic. It has that iconic side profile of what we've grown to love and expect from a Toyota Land Cruiser. When you see it, if you just see that silhouette, it's clearly a Land Cruiser, and I love that. One thing of note for a design cue, it is, I don't even know if this is considered a design cue, but it is 4.5 inches less wide than the 200 series. So we kind of expected it to be a little bit smaller because it's not the big dog. It's not, you know, it's in between. You know, it's the 250 series, the Prado, if you will, is what it's based on, and not the 200 series. The 200 series evolved into the 300 series, which is of course the extra big version of it. But we don't get that in the United States. So 4.5 inches less wide. I love the Heritage grille. So I hinted at that in my previous videos. I always have loved that Heritage with the classic Toyota script across the front. That looks phenomenal, and that is standard on each of the 3 trims that we're seeing. Wide fender flares. So this, I think I'm going to be extra happy to see in person. So based on the number of videos I've watched, you don't get a great, good representation of how wide they are, but you can tell. You can tell there's a lot of curvature to the fenders, and I really like that. It's a really cool look, and it kind of looks like the Land Rover Defender a little bit when it comes to the fender flares, because I remember being blown away just how wide they were in the flesh when I saw that Defender for the first time. So I think I'm going to be equally amazed when I see this in the flesh too. So I love that with that matte black trim finish around the fender flares. That's great. FJ style mirrors, awesome touch, right? Because it looks just like the FJ Cruiser, what we had seen recently. So love that aspect of it. The black accents all throughout the 1958 version is awesome. The black headliner in the 4Runner, we've historically have always gotten the tan headliner. Same with the new Tundra and new Sequoia Tier D Pros. They've come with the tan headliner, which it would have been so easy to make that black and fitting, especially for the Tier D Pro models, right? Trims. So we got black headliner in it with it, which is a small win, but a much needed win, I think. One minor note, I almost didn't include this in here, but I did notice that on the 1958 version, it did not have the Land Cruiser, only on the 1958 version, they had the Land Cruiser embossed in the passenger side dash. And I didn't notice that. I didn't see that on the other trim that was unveiled and showcased, and the Heritage Blue one. The Land Cruiser trim, the mid-tier, did not have that stamp. So I thought that was interesting. I think it's cool that the 1958 does have it. There's no gloss black on the bumper. So this, so often manufacturers are putting gloss black everywhere they can. They see it as like a nicer trim piece, if you will, more luxurious look. But I love the fact that they're holding on to the raw ruggedness of what the Land Cruiser should be and kept it all kind of flat black throughout, with the exception of the door handles and then the very, very far back trim piece where you actually open up the rear hatch. That is gloss black. Simplicity is definitely carried into the interior on all trims, but especially, of course, the lowest trim level, the 1958 version, really does look incredible. And I love, and I hate that I'm saying this out loud. I didn't think I would say this as I first saw it, but the more I watch videos of it, I actually really love the cloth material on the 1958 version. It actually looks pretty cool. super retro looking. Like we have seen so many 90s vehicles with that cloth looking design. So I actually really like that. Let me know if I'm a goofball for thinking that, but personally, I'm a fan. We saw the dark brown soft text leather material on the other trim that was shown. That was the Land Cruiser, then the Heritage Blue. So I thought that was nice with the white stitching throughout it. And when I say simplicity on all trims, what I mean by that is, like all the door panels appear to be a nice rubberized material, rubberized floor mats all throughout, all weather floor mats. There was nothing super flashy about it. The ergonomics of your seating position, including the intuitiveness of the actual infotainment and all the buttons and knobs and everything, was very easy to use seemingly and very simplistic. So I appreciate them carrying that theme over to the new Land Cruiser here, the 250 series. Full digital gauge cluster, we expect that at this point. That's our new norm. Full digital gauge cluster is the new norm, whether you like it or not, right? No more analog for us. The 1958 version had the 8-inch infotainment screen, whereas of course the upper trim, the mid-tier, and the first edition, I imagine, are going to have the 12.3 inch with the modern infotainment system for Toyota. Strange location for the volume knob. I'm not sure if I'm actually gonna be able to find a good photo to showcase this, but watching through the videos, it seemed a little odd, borderline out of place, that there was just a tiny little volume knob to the left of the giant 12.3 inch infotainment screen. So I appreciate that there is a physical knob rather than touchscreen to adjust the volume, but it just seems small and tiny and by itself out of place. So kind of initial observation, maybe when I see it in the flesh, I'll change my mind on that. Got a digital rearview mirror, kind of expect that. We saw that, of course, on the Land Cruiser trim, the mid-tier. I'm not sure if the 1958 will have that. The steering wheel, I thought the steering wheel was awesome. The classic Toyota script right across the middle of it, and just the design of it was very reminiscent of Toyotas of the past and old 4Runners and such. So I liked seeing that. 18-inch wheels, wasn't a fan of those. The matte black 18-inch wheels were kind of bland. But again, they're keeping the price point down. So you got to kind of remind yourself as you're looking at these vehicles, like, where did they cut cost? Where did they try to find those savings? Whereas, you're not getting the forged BBS wheels that we find on like the modern Tundra Tier 2 Pro and Sequoia Tier 2 Pro. You're finding they had to save money, and I think that was a prime example of it. I'm sure they're great, blah, 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 but they don't really look that great to me anyway. They're a 6-lug wheel, 265/70 for the diameter there. I thought the spoiler out back looked pretty neat, so pretty sleek, really flowed with the roof line extremely well. Already talked about the headlights. I prefer the rectangular headlights that we find on the Land Cruiser mid-tier trim over the circular lights. However, everything else on the 1958 is really what I gravitated to. I appreciate the fact that there's a very conscious effort to make the headlights high up on the front bumper, very high up. Same goes for the tail lights. And you can tell, not only is that to provide excellent visibility over tall grass and as you're forging water perhaps at night or whatever, you can tell that they've placed everything where they think it'll be least likely to be damaged while you're off-roading. And B, kind of on a side note of this, is you can tell the different body parts and bumper panels and whatnot is more segmented, and segmented on purpose, obviously. If you were to damage any bit of it, it'd be easier to replace that one little bit. So I'll show the front bumper here, and it kind of gives you an idea of the segmented pieces of it. So if you bump it, scuff it, you can get it fixed pretty easily without totally redoing the entire front end or rear quarter panel and whatnot, right? So I appreciate that very clear, conscious effort of Toyota to do that. I really like the sleek, low profile, rigid fog lights, and apparently you can change colors between amber and white LED. You can change it on the Land Cruiser and up trim. That didn't appear to be the case on the 1958 though, but I did like the placement of it and how small they were. I thought that was sleek. The colors. So they mentioned 5 different colors. I took note of the 3, I think, primary colors really. I might be missing one, but the 3 primary ones were Meteor Shower, Trail Dust, and Heritage Blue. Both Trail Dust and Heritage Blue, based on all the all the videos I watched, those appear to be the only 2 that you can get the grayscale roof. So you get that the different color, lighter roof top, which looks good in a very classic look, paying homage to the FJ40s of the past, the OGs. All right, let's shift gears to functionality. So we'll go through functionality, then talk performance real quick, then I'll wrap up with my final thoughts. So functionality, visibility. Obviously, visibility and a commanding road presence has always been a staple of the Land Cruiser at large. And you can tell that they carried that over. A ton of window space all throughout. And especially you get the swooping window out for the back seat there for the back passengers. I love that, giving it even a clear effort of giving it even more window view space. So I like seeing that. And not to mention the huge windshield. Again, that commanding view, which we've come to really expect and appreciate of the Land Cruiser. Excellent approach and departure angles by the sound of it. I wrote down 8.7 inches. I believe that's what I heard of clearance, which is good. That's great. I mean, but when you compare it to like a Jeep Wrangler, probably not that great, but for what it is good. Great headspace. So this is perhaps one of the most notable parts. So on the interior, and being about that dad life and having to put car seats in the back seat all the time, always swapping them in and out, putting kids in and out of the vehicle, you really grow to appreciate headspace. So I think that is something that I'm really going to love about it. And perhaps it even looks a little bit better than what we find on the modern 4Runner, the 5th generation 4Runner. So love the headspace. It's a big box, seemingly. Circular air vents, a small note, almost didn't include this, but I do appreciate that. That simplistic design cue of the interior and ease of use and adjustment on the inside, the circular air vents. Mentioned the panels for repair, the functionality piece of that, just being able to take it off-roading with good peace of mind, knowing that if you bump into something, you'll be able to fix it without having to break your bank for it. Manual liftgate out back on the 1958, it appeared to be an electronic one on the mid-tier there. I'd imagine this could, of course, be the case on the first edition as well. Manual seats on the 1958, you did get electronic controls on the mid-tier and up. Grab handles, and this is an important note for a lot of us. You don't get a grab handle on your driver's side door of the modern 5th generation 4Runner. You had to get that aftermarket if you want to try to do it. So I do appreciate seeing that they have the grab handles on both the driver's side and passenger side, as well as the back seats on your entry point. So that was great to see. Prop hood. So this is, again, one of those small indicators of perhaps them trying to cut costs a little bit. They have a prop hood, all of them prop hood. And by the sounds of what the other reviewers were describing, it's a very heavy hood. Much like what we find on the 3rd generation Toyota Tacoma. That Toyota Tacoma hood was like a giant, seemingly, I know it's not, a giant steel hood that just weighed a ton. And that seems like that is the case for the new Land Cruiser as well. So a prop hood, a manual prop hood. What else? So the rear glass pop open, so you get a little button in the far corner of the rear glass that'll pop open for you. We don't get the cool feature of the 4Runner where it goes up and down, and what we find on the Tundra as well, the roll up and down rear glass window. Skid plates, of course, throughout, 360 degree cameras throughout the vehicle, allowing it to be a very, very purposeful vehicle off-road, which is great. Driver's side gas cap. Figured it's worth noting because on the Land Cruiser, the 200 series, it is on the passenger side gas cap. The gas cap is. So something of note. So it does match what we've gotten used to with like the modern 4Runner. Higher cargo floor out back. So the cargo space out back seems plenty big. Again, having that box design really gives it a whole lot of upper space to it. But it did seem like the actual floor of the cargo space was rather high. So it's something to take note of. Let's talk performance, okay? Perhaps the most exciting part. So I am not a fan of iForce Max. I already talked about that a million times. I won't beat it totally to death. But there is something to be said about the performance numbers here, okay? So although it is a four-cylinder, twin turbocharged hybrid power plant, it does crank out quite a bit of horsepower, 326 horsepower and 465 foot-pounds of torque. And that's pretty incredible out of a four-banger. Is that what we've gotten to? That's pretty freaking remarkable. 6,000 pounds towing, that is what we get out of it. But now think about it. Let's compare that to what we get in the Lexus GX 550. The Lexus GX 550 comes with a 3.4 liter twin turbo V6. So with that, we get a little bit more horsepower and a little bit more torque. So we get 349 horsepower and 479 foot-pounds of torque out of that. So just a little bit better. But again, we don't have that battery pack strapped to it. It does allow us to tow up to 8,000 pounds, so a couple thousand pounds more for towing capability out of that GX 550 with that larger displacement engine. So which one do I prefer? Let me just make that clear right here. So I do appreciate vehicles without the battery packs. You know, I mean, I like being able to turn a vehicle on and the engine roar to life. The one thing that kind of bothered me with my Sequoia and Tundra Tier 2 Pros, my 2023 models, was, you know, you hit the button, the power button, and I was used to my previous Tundra where I'd hit that button and that 5.7 liter V8 would roar to life with that TRD catback exhaust. And then with my new ones, I'd hit that button and kind of like you hear kind of a beeping in the vehicle and then kind of like a little buzz. And that was kind of it. And then sometimes it would flare up a little bit, right, if the engine actually started, right? So that weird null period of like you hit the button and like 4 seconds go by, then the engine kind of powers on. It just felt so synthetic to me and that bothered me. So between the two, I will for sure lean the direction of the GX 550. I love the nameplate of the Land Cruiser. I've owned a handful of them at this point, and I think I could take more pride in having a quote-unquote Land Cruiser. But man, I do wish they at least offered the same exact power plant that they're offering in the same exact platform, the GX 550. I just wish they offered that. But if you think about it, it does kind of make sense, because what they do with the GX 460, right? The GX 460 had the 4.6 liter V8. And that was the only option that you got in it. And then we had the same exact platform on the 4Runner, right? And it had the 4 liter V6. And that's all the engine that you got out of that. So it was a smaller displacement engine. They kind of replicated that onward to the Land Cruiser and the GX 550. So both of them do come with a crawl control. I should have included that earlier. And the higher grades, the mid-grade and the upper grade, do come with multi-terrain selection as well, not the 1958. So my final note here is, you know, the Toyota Land Cruiser is a legendary nameplate, and Toyota knows that they cannot afford to get it wrong. So although I do not love the 4-cylinder iForce Max, the idea of it I don't love, I do find it strangely reassuring that Toyota is slapping it in their most iconic vehicle with such confidence. So they're putting that motor in there, and they obviously have full confidence in it. And they've kind of beat the drum on the unveiling of it, saying, hey, this is going to be, you know, even more durable and more reliable than Land Cruisers in the past, they're saying. So the fact that they're putting it in there with full confidence, I do find it strangely reassuring, although I don't love the idea of it. So I kind of want to be fair with that and throw that nugget to you. So this is a long video. Really just want to kind of voice my initial thoughts, my initial reactions to it, being far from it. But through the photos and videos I've watched, I do like what I see. However, I do think I'm going to lean toward the Lexus GX 550. What are your thoughts? Appreciate you watching as always. Until next time.